Hello, it's Tara Boothby, and I'm going to do a vlog that I've been thinking about for quite some time, and that is on the topic of being out of relationships with other people to get things going. I'm going to read a chapter, or not a whole chapter, but a part of one of the chapters in my book, Love and Love's Energy. There's a chapter called You Get to Choose Who You Are in All of Your Relationships. And I wanted to just read a couple paragraphs to get focused on this conversation. And these two paragraphs are found on page 68. So, no matter what your story is, no matter your past, no matter your current circumstance, you get to choose who you are in all of your relationships, regardless of your relationships. The flip side is also true. You have been deciding who you are. We all are always deciding who we are, though we rarely pay attention to these decisions. The good news is that at this very moment, we can start to pay attention. At times, life is unkind to us. For some, life is very, very unkind. We still have a choice. Not noticing our power of choice is a decision in itself. In the past, we may have believed we were powerless. We may have believed we had no other option of how to be with people. But here we are, learning something new. We are learning how to unleash our capacity to be mindful about choosing who we are in our relationships based on who we want to be in our relationships. We are allowing space for our own curiosity about our whole self. You get to choose who you are in all of your relationships. I love this little chapter. I love contemplating that simple and powerful truth that I have discussed with so many clients in this room. This is where I see people, right? This is my office at Sojourn. You get to choose who you are in all of your relationships. So being out of relationship, tis the season to feel really badly about this dilemma when we're out of relationship with people. Who listening is out of relationship with people? There's people that I'm out of relationship with. And it's confusing when I sit in a space where I'm out of relationship. I have to say, am I alienating somebody? Or am I trying to navigate my moves forward to participate in relationship in a way that is of love's kind? So I think that the spiritual dilemma here is that sometimes we do need to take space, but what are we taking space for, and how are we taking space? And hopefully, if we are taking space, if we're out of relationship, it's to figure out to navigate how to be back in relationship. So being in relationship is always the better choice. It's not always possible. I mean, maybe somebody better than me will be able to tell us how to always be in relationship. I have a theory on somebody who would be better than me. But I study attachment. I wrote this book about attachment and love, and I care profoundly about helping people be in loving relationships and to participate in all things that are of love's kind. I believe love is always inclusive and love is always loving, or it is not love. But there is a spiritual spot where we step back and take a breath so that we can hopefully go back in. And human relationships are flawed. We're all flawed and fabulous, but we're still flawed. So there's some ways that I'm flawed, and I don't know if I'll be able to step back into some relationships. And then there's some relationships where people are unaccountable to their own flaws, and that's not our responsibility. We get to choose who we are in all of our relationships, and we get to like ourselves in all of our relationships. We are not just loved by love. Supernatural love is not just there's some detached entity that is loving you. You're loved by some, man in a golden chair in a cloud. So that's sort of a stereotype that some of us really remove the idea of what supernatural love is. Love's energy says you are loved, you are lovable, and you are loving. So we can sit in spaces when we're out of relationship to navigate, how am I lovable and how am I loving? And if I'm in a relationship where somebody is ascribing that I am not lovable, and I am not loving, then I'm not loved by that person. And I need to take time for me to consider that. And I'm talking about this in such a personal way. I'm using a lot of proxy. But I also want to share in that burden. I have many people who I deeply love. I think a lot about my dear friend who was just a pastor and his community completely turned their back on him a couple summers ago. I love my friend. Breaks my heart, sad. Um, I don't think that that's a relationship or a system that this person will be able to return to. I don't know how. Maybe. That would take a lot of healing because that is so heartbreaking. That is like a huge community loss, a familial loss. And other people have had really, really hard, terrible things. There are relationships that we would never tell somebody to return to. So if you're wrestling and you're feeling the burden, if you're feeling the grief and loss of losing, faith-based community, of losing family relationships, of having somebody alienate themselves so badly that you are carrying the burden of having the boundaries with such a person, because that's a very confusing thing. And that is probably the most common thing I see. Somebody alienates themselves, and then another person has to have boundaries, and the person holding the boundaries is judged and criticized and told to be a better person. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that's happened to you. It's happened to me. Sit in love. You are loved. You are lovable, and you are loving. You get to like yourself in all of your relationships. And I want you to like yourself. I like liking me, and I don't like myself all the time. I don't always trust that I am loved, lovable, and loving. Remember, I'm afraid I'm hurtless sometimes, so we're in our humanity and in our flawed, painful spots. It's hard to trust, but that's where I like to really repeat some of the language that has worked for me. Is that when I forget that I am loved, lovable, and loving, maybe I can remember that I do have the power to choose, and I am choosing. And maybe that will help me to step back in to think about how I'm trying to let love govern my decisions and my relationships. I am trying to let love govern my relationships, even the ones where I'm out of relationship with other people. And I trust you can try to do that too. So I grieve the relationships that I'm holding that are broken. And I encourage you that it is okay that you can grieve the relationships that you are holding that are broken as well. And yeah, we're all just people like everybody else. And we are walking each other home. So look for the friends on the trail. That's one of my favorite things that one of my current mentors says, Ron Dart. Friends on the trail. Some of us are further ahead. Maybe this conversation is me being further ahead on, self-compassion about the loss of relationships that I wish I didn't have to lose. And I hope that you can practice some self-compassion and self-love. Okay. Tender journey, peace and love, and happy Christmas, or however you might say that. If you wouldn't say happy Christmas, I do hope that you step into the mystery of this season of Advent, and the beauty of Christmas lights. Take care.